Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, thanks for stopping by. I'm Carol and I'm glad to have you here. I hope you will consider subscribing. So today's video is part of the Canuary 2025 collaboration. This collaboration is sponsored by Sutton's Days and ForJars. So for today's video, I'm going to be using the ForJars canning lids. I've never used them before. This is my first time using them, but they are the sponsor of this collaboration, so I'm going to give you my feedback in another video, but I'll demonstrate how to use them today. So one of the things I want to mention about the ForJars lids, they do require that you simmer your lids before you use them. The ball lids, they changed their compound a number of years ago, so those lids do not need to be simmered, and the superb lids, which I also use, they do not require simmering either, but just note that these do. So just make sure whatever brand of lids you are using in your canning projects that you make sure you read the instructions and use them accordingly. If you do not follow the instructions, that could cause seal failures, and we don't want that, right? So Lisa with Sutton's Days contacted me, asked me to be a part of this collaboration. I will link her video below in the description box so you can go back and watch it. She explains the collaboration and she also goes into detail about there's going to be a giveaway at the end, so you'll want to go back and check out her intro video. Also, I will also leave a list of the other YouTubers who are a part of this collaboration so that you can have links to their videos. I highly encourage you to go take a look at their channels, like, subscribe, and share their videos as well. Learn some new canning recipes, tips, and tricks. So what I'm going to be demonstrating today is I'm going to be making a lemon chicken and white bean soup. But I'm going to be using the Can Your Soup method from the National Center of Home Food Preservation because this is not a quote-unquote tested recipe. I often get asked by you guys for two things. One, for meals in a jar, which this is. And the other thing I get asked is, can I can up my own soups? So this method that they use allows you to use your own soup recipe as long as there's nothing in it that's unsafe for canning. And I'm going to leave the link to the instructions for this in the description box below, so make sure you check it out. So for those of you who are seasoned canners, you know that we cannot can things like noodles, pasta, rice, flour, cream, milk, thickening agents, anything like that. If you are going to be adding beans, dried beans to your soup, they have to be rehydrated prior to using them in a canning recipe. But other than that, you can use any vegetable or meat that has its own canning instructions to construct your own soup. So that's what I'm going to be doing today, and I'm going to follow their guidelines for doing that. The other thing that I love about this method is it allows us to can for a lesser amount of time. The reason for that is when we put our product in the jar, we're going to do half solids and half liquids. So we're gonna fill our jar with half of the solids that are in our soup, and then you're gonna top it off with your liquid, maintaining a 1-inch headspace. The ratio of half liquids to half solids allows us to can for a lesser canning time. So I get that question a lot too, because I have used this method for several soups that I have on my channel, and I get comments saying, well, you're not canning that for the right amount of time. I am canning it for the proper amount of time per the guideline that I am using. So the procedure for canning up your own soup is to select, wash, and prepare your vegetables, meat, and seafoods as described for the specific foods in their own canning instructions. If you're using meat, you're going to cover it with water and cook it until tender. Cool the meat, remove the bones, cook the vegetables as described for a hot pack. So if any ingredients that have both raw pack and hot pack options, make sure you are using the instructions for hot pack options. For each cup of dried beans or peas, which my recipe is going to include, you're going to add 3 cups of water, boil 2 minutes, remove from the heat, soak for an hour, heat to a boil, and then drain, which is basically a quick soak. You're going to once you prep all of your ingredients, you're going to combine the solid ingredients with meat broth, tomatoes, or water to cover, and you're going to boil it 5 minutes, and then it's all ready for canning. So the ingredients that I'm going to be using for my soup is a whole chicken. We're going to use a pound of white beans. You can use cannellini beans, Great Northern, or navy beans. I did use Great Northern beans. I'm going to be using carrots. I'm going to be using dried onion. It is safe to use fresh onion if you prefer, but I like dried onion in canning. Dried spices are always safe to use in canning. Plus, I think dried onion adds a little more punch and flavor. So I'm going to be using dried onion, dried rosemary, lemon pepper seasoning, garlic powder, dried parsley, and then some fresh lemon juice. A note on the lemon juice. The lemon juice is not used for safety here, it's only used for flavoring. I'm going to give you the amount that I used. You may want to adjust that up or down depending on the flavor profile you're going for. Just know that lemon tends to intensify in flavor as it is when you process it, when you can it up. So you might want to use less than I'm using, but I'm going to be using approximately 2 to 4 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice to make my soup. So the seasonings that I'm using, those are all to taste. So I'm telling you what amounts I used. Again, feel free to adjust those. Like I stated before, dried seasonings, you're free to change those up and add them however you see fit, whatever flavor profile you are going for. So if there's another dried seasoning you would like to add to this soup, feel free to add it. This is just what I enjoy. I kept it pretty basic. But the important part is I really wanted to demonstrate this method once again because I think it is a great guideline to know and procedure to have in your arsenal so that you can can up more of the soups that you enjoy. The other thing I wanted to mention is I am making my stock from scratch because you have to cook your chicken anyway. So I'm going to demonstrate using a whole chicken, which will make the stock for me as well as cook my chicken. If you do not want to make your stock fresh, you can always use stock that you make yourself, that you have on your shelf, or you can also use better than bouillon and reconstitute it to use it in place of the stock that I'm going to show you how to make. So for the stock and to cook our chicken, I'm going to take a whole chicken. I'm going to roughly chop 1 onion, 1 stalk of celery, 1 carrot. I'm going to add the juice of 1/2 a lemon, 1 tablespoon of salt, a few peppercorns, and 1 bay leaf. We're going to cover that and cook it until the chicken is tender. You want to make sure you do not overcook it or your chicken will be dried out because it will continue to cook during the canning process. So just cook your chicken just until it's easily pierced with a fork. Once your chicken is done, you're going to debone it and either chop it or shred it. I'm just going to shred mine. To prep my beans, I'm doing exactly what I described to you that the guideline states to do. I did the quick soak by covering my beans with water and then bringing them to a boil, boiling for 2 minutes, adding a lid and letting them soak for 1 hour, and then I drained them. Okay guys, we are all set to assemble our soup. I have the stock that I made from the chicken carcass. It's about 4, I would say about 4 quarts of stock in here. To that, I'm going to add about 1.5 cups of carrots. It was 2 large carrots that I sliced. I'm going to add my chicken. I just deboned the chicken, pulled the meat off, and shredded it. I have about 3 cups of meat here. And then my beans, I showed you how I prepared them, and then I just drained them, so they are all set to go with 1 pound of beans. All right, and now we are all set to add our seasonings. This is all going to be to taste. This is what I came up with. You can add other dried seasonings. You can leave things out. You can adjust them however you want. This is just how I enjoy this soup. I am going to add a tablespoon of dried onion, a tablespoon of lemon pepper seasoning, 2 teaspoons of granulated garlic, 2 teaspoons of dried rosemary. Rosemary is pretty strong, so make sure you know how well you like rosemary before you start adding that to your soup. And then I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of dried parsley for some color. Parsley doesn't add a ton of flavor, but it does add some beautiful color. So 2 teaspoons of dried parsley. And then I'm going to add the juice of the other half of the lemon. The first half of the lemon we use to make our stock. Taste your stock, see how it is on flavor for you. Mine could use a little bit more lemon flavor. Just know that the lemon pepper seasoning has lemon peel in it, which is going to amp up the flavor of the lemon. Also, when you can with lemon juice, it does intensify in flavor. So before you go adding it, make sure that you understand that. So it's just about another tablespoon of lemon juice. We're going to give that a stir. And then we are going to bring this up to a boil. We're going to boil it for 5 minutes. While that is happening, I'm going to get my canner and my jars ready. Okay guys, we are all set for canning. Now I did want to mention that I did bring my soup up to a boil, and I did boil it for 5 minutes with the lid on, simply because I didn't want to lose any of my stock. So make sure that you taste your soup and that you're happy with the seasonings and adjust accordingly. So we're all set for canning now. I have 3 quarts of simmering water in the bottom of my pressure canner. Modern canning guidelines state that we do not need to pre-sterilize jars or lids as long as we are processing for 10 minutes or more. So my jars I just washed and I've kept them hot in my canner. Today I am going to be using the ForJars lids, and their instructions are to bring those lids to a simmer, so I did do that. When you use the ball lids or the Superb lids, it's not necessary, and you shouldn't bring them to a simmer, but ForJars, their instructions are to bring them to a simmer. So if you are using ForJars lids, make sure that you do that. As I stated before, we're going to be using the can your own soup method as described by the National Center of Home Food Preservation. So we are going to be filling our jars with half solids and then fill the rest of it with liquid. I'm canning in pints, but you can also can this in quarts. So again, we're going to be filling our jars with solids halfway, and then we're going to top it off with just our stock. Half solids, half liquid. That is really important for proper processing. And it's also nice because it reduces our processing time. All right, so once you get your jars filled appropriately, you're going to use a debubbling tool, plastic butter knife, or chopstick to debubble your jars. We want to remove any air bubbles. If your headspace changes from the 1 inch, you can top it off to adjust it. Then we're going to use a paper towel dipped in white vinegar to clean our rims. We don't want anything to interfere with getting a good seal. And I'm going to use this little magnetic guy to get my lids out of the simmering water. And then we're going to add our bands to fingertip tight. And in the canner they go. Okay guys, my canner is full. I did have a little bit left over, so this is going to make 4 to 6 quarts of soup. Before I put my lid on, I'm going to use a couple of tablespoons that I had left over my white vinegar. I'm going to put that in my canning water. Sometimes we have minerals in our water that can collect on our jars, and it makes the outside of our jars look cloudy. That happens during the canning process. So if you put a couple of tablespoons of white vinegar in your canning water, that doesn't happen. Now we're going to put our lid on. We're going to match up the arrow with the notch for the All-American canner. Please follow the instructions for whatever canner it is that you are using. Want to get it fairly straight, and then we're going to tighten our thumb screws 2 at a time, opposites. I'm gonna crank my heat up to high, and then we're going to vent the canner for 10 minutes. Venting means that we are allowing steam to come out of our steam vent for 10 minutes, and that is required for proper processing. Okay guys, I've been venting for 10 minutes, so now it's time to put my weight on. I am going to be processing at 10 PSI. That's appropriate for my altitude. Make sure that you know your altitude and what PSI you need to process at. So I'm gonna add my weight to 10 PSI. If you're using a dial gauge canner, you're going to be processing at 11 PSI. We are going to bring the canner up to temperature. Once it hits the 240 degrees, my weight's going to start rocking. So for those of you who are using a weighted gauge canner, when the rocking of your weight starts, that's when you will start your processing time. Once we get there, we're going to slowly adjust our heat just to maintain the rocking. For the All-American canner, your weight should rock 1 to 3 times a minute. The Presto canner is supposed to kind of rock continuously. So make sure you understand what the instructions are for the canner that you are using. I'm going to be processing for 60 minutes. That's what's appropriate for pints, which is what I'm canning. If you are canning in quarts, you're going to process for 75 minutes. So when we get there, I'll bring you back. Okay guys, we are all done. I processed for 60 minutes. Like I told you, if you are canning in quarts, you are going to process for 75 minutes. Once my time was up, I turned the heat off, let my canner turn to 0 pressure, removed the weight, waited about 5 minutes, removed my lid, and then let my jar sit an additional 10 minutes in my canner to cool before I took them out. So there they are. Doesn't that look yummy? So good. I cannot wait to have this on my shelf. So I hope you'll give this recipe a try, and I hope that the method that I described here will help you expand your canning horizons. I will leave a link in the description box below, once again, that explains how to follow the guidelines to can up your own soup, and hopefully you will give some of your own soups a try. Thanks for coming along with me today, guys. I hope you have a fantastic day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next time.